What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Scale News Update. If you're not familiar with the show, this is where we talk about the news topics that happen in the scale world of RC over the past week. If you enjoy the Scale News Updates every week, hit the like button. Let's jump into this week's episode. First for this week, the biggest new release as of late, the Axial SCX-10-3 Base Camp. Now, this is a new release that doesn't get a lot of people who are already in the hobby super riled up, but for people new coming into the hobby, this is a good release. It's the lowest price SCX-10-3 you can get into, and they really just stripped it down to the bare bones version. They called it the base camp because it's the starting point, either because you're new into the hobby or you're gonna try and turn it into something else. That's the whole point of this thing. It does have a new 5-gear transmission, which I covered in depth in the video that I had put out the day of the release. As a note of correction, during that, I had showed how the gearing can be moved around and flipped. That's not 100% true. They're actually gonna sell a separate gear that is just a couple of teeth different than the one that's in there, and you will put that one into the position that I showed in the video. That gear is not included, and you'll do that if you go to straight axe. I wasn't given that information until well after the video had come out, so I have some information in that video that isn't 100% true. These new SCX-3 base camps are going to be available very soon, much quicker than Horizon's normal schedule of press release to product availability. So they've condensed that down quite a bit. So if you pre-ordered or ordered at all, it sounds like you're going to be getting them fairly quickly. If you'd like the full details on the new base camp, I will link to the video that I did at the time of release that has a lot more in-depth information and some running footage at the end with commentary. But check that out if you're interested. And then next Wednesday, a little over a week from now, Matt and I are going to be releasing our 24-hour mayhem. We're each going to take the base camp and in 24 hours do whatever we can to transform that truck into our own custom version of it. So watch for that. Should be a good time. Super tight timeline. We're not telling each other what we're doing. We're just going all in. Super loose rules, but tight time constraint. I'm actually really looking forward to this little mini build off. And lastly, on the base camp, that body is very much based off of the Proline metric body, which if you guys remember was released like a few years ago or something like that. And Knight Customs had a bunch of parts that you could 3D print for that. So if you shop around on his My Mini Factory, you may be able to find some parts that would work well for that project. So check that out. Knight Customs, My Mini Factory, always a good place to go if you're trying to dress up a new build. Then WPL released a couple more versions of their D12 and D42. I have no explanation for my fascination with these little WPLs. I have too many of them, and I can't help it. They released a white version of the D42, a blue version of the D12. If you don't have one, you need one. You just do. And you can't explain it until you get one. They're silly, but there's lots of possibilities with these things. I have no ulterior motives other than just making you spend money on these silly things like I have. WPL, if you're watching, I need one of each of these. Last week, Vanquish Products released a number of new shock upgrade option parts for the S8E shocks. The S8E shocks are the shocks that come on the VS410 Phoenix and are available separately in both 80 and 90 millimeter length. The new option parts, you can get machined shock caps, which come in black, orange, and blue. They've got the bleeder screw in them, just a nice aluminum cap so it goes on there nice and secure. It also has a nylon insert that's pressed in place to help hold the pivot ball in the cap. So you've got a nice metal pivot ball in the top of the cap, but it rides on a nylon insert so you don't have a sloppy top of your shock. A nice little feature. Additionally, there's also hard anodized aluminum shock bodies for both the 80 and 90 millimeter length, tinitride shafts for 80 and 90 millimeter length, machined aluminum preload adjusters in black, blue, and orange, and machined shock pistons. So you can build up your shocks with any combination of these that you like. They all work with the stock kit versions, or go all out, anything you like, but build them to the color you want, whatever combination it is. Check those out. I'll link to them in the description below, as well as links to the rest of the stories for this week. Thanks to Reefs RC for sponsoring this week's Scale News Update. Reefs RC recently released the 888 Servo. This is a direct power servo that's 4S capable. So at 16 volts, the fully charged 4S LiPo, it's actually over 900 ounce-inches of torque. I've been running this in one of my recent trucks and really enjoying it. If you've never ran a direct power servo before, it's really convenient. You get all of the power direct from your battery without being dependent on an internal BEC of whatever ESC you're running or having to purchase and run an external BEC. This servo has been great. Really enjoy it. Check out Reefs RC. Link to this servo in the description below. And again, thanks to Reefs RC for sponsoring this week's Scale News Update. Furatech released another new chassis this week. Now, this time it's not for an SCX24 though. It's actually for the Kyosho 4x4s or the Mini Zs, presumably. You don't see as many option parts for the Kyosho platform as you do to like the SCX24 or some of the other 24 scale platforms. Obviously, they're usually a little bit more towards the scale side than the performance side, and that can be noted in a number of ways. But if you are trying to eke a little bit more performance out of it, here's an option of one that I haven't seen a ton of so far. So if you have one of the Kyosho Mini Zs, check this out. Or if you've got SCX24 stuff, obviously, you've probably already seen Furatech's website. Exotek is releasing their own drag tires and wheels. And interestingly enough, these are not the standard 2230 style. These have a consistent diameter across the bore. So you get a more even or a larger sidewall on the inside than a 3.0 would, which is part of their selling point. Now, these also have an air valve in the molded wheel so that you can run air pressure in your tire rather than a foam style, which does seem to be a common practice now in no prep racing. Now, it doesn't appear that these tires are belted, and that seems to be kind of a go-to at this point in no prep. These are also a little bit shorter and a little bit wider, but you never know. No prep racing, things change all the time. All of a sudden, someone's going crazy fast with something outside the box. If you want to be one of the first to give them a shot, check out Exotek's new release. I'll link it in the description below as well. Drive RC is teasing a new release. Now, it doesn't necessarily look like it will be scale. It's a very blurry image that to me looks like some sort of monster truck. Normally I've seen drag racing bodies from Drive RC, but now we've got this one. It looks very familiar in a blurry way. Part of me says that it looks like a Transformer. Part of me says that it looks like something out of Cars. I don't know. You take your best guess or wait for them to post a better photo. Depends on how much you care, I guess. If it's interesting enough, we'll definitely cover it here again. If it's not and you didn't care in the first place, you'll never hear about this again. If you bought one of the RC 4-wheel drive TF2 24th scale versions and you want to stay with their oddball non-standard 0.7 inch wheel size, then you can upgrade to these new stamped chrome version of those in particular wheels. Again, 0.7 rather than the more standard 1 inch beadlock wheels, which there's a ton of options for. They made a chrome version. You can buy the stamped white wagon wheels separately now as well, which I think those are what come on that truck stock. If you happen to need another pair, this is a pin drive in the back rather than a typical hex drive wheel. It does have scale hardware for the lug nuts, so that's something. This Wednesday, live stream takeover, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 113 some odd weeks in a row. Matt and I will have a guest on this week as well, though, so you can come check that out. West Desert Wheeler will be joining us this week. And then Friday, same dog and pony show as always. I'll figure out something that we're going to work on, but check that out for Friday Night Live. But that'll do it for this week's topics. For this week's question section, last week we talked about what phase you guys were in as far as building or running, and it was pretty split, more split than I thought it would be. I thought people would be more in the same vein, but I guess the hobby's pretty broad, and it doesn't surprise me that there's a lot of people just trying to get some projects wrapped up and some people that are starting to be able to enjoy them more based on where they live and the weather improving a little bit. But for this week, I want to talk about your comfort zone, specifically stepping outside of it. This last weekend, I painted a body and more effort into it than I ever have before, trying a patina paint job even. Turned out much better than I expected that it would, and I actually enjoyed it more than I'd probably care to admit. But wanted to ask you guys for this week, what was the last time you stepped outside of your comfort zone, did something that you specifically didn't think you were very good at or didn't like, and then ultimately in the end had good results, I hope. Maybe it's the RC hobby as a whole, or maybe it was something specific, or even outside of the RC hobby. Throw it out there. The questions are always my favorite part of the Scale News. So hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week. If you enjoy the Scale News update, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and hit the notification bell so you see Scale News updates as soon as they get uploaded. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.